Welcome to the LinkedIn Collective Studio, coming to you from the 71st Cannes Lion Festival of Creativity. I'm Diana Liu, Canada Country Manager and Senior Director of Strategic Accounts at LinkedIn, and I'm excited to be joined today by Mark Guilderman, Founder and CEO at Adelaide, and Yan Liu, CEO and Co-Founder at TVision. Before we start our chat, I'd love for the two of you to tell us a little bit about what you do, and we'll start with you, Mark.
Thanks for having me. I'm Mark Guilderman, one of the founders and CEO at Adelaide. Adelaide is the first platform that helps advertisers understand media quality through the lens of attention metrics. We work with some of the biggest brands in the world to help them drive better outcomes through their media spend.
So my name is Yang. I'm co-founder CEO at TVision. Similar to Adelaide, we're also an attention measurement company, but our focus is around CTV and TV, and Adelaide is our partner. And both of us actually were directors and founder for the Attention Council.
Yeah, you two spend a lot of time together. Well, thank you both for being here with us today. Let's dive into why we're here, to clearly define attention metrics and then make them more tangible for marketers. And so, let's kick off with what are attention metrics and why do they actually matter?
So attention metrics are a new way of looking at the entire media and creative experience. At Adelaide, we like to break down attention metrics from this monolith of how long are people paying attention and try to understand what are the various inputs, like how do you use attention to understand media quality, how do you use attention to understand creative and audience. So the technical definition for attention is like how long is someone focused on something, but that's not really a good media quality metric. So we try to break it apart and understand the nuances of each of the factors that contribute to attention.
Give an example of a nuance.
Yeah, so I think my favorite one is you don't necessarily want the audience who's paying the most attention. Yan actually did some really interesting research around this as well, showing that as frequency increases, you get more and more attention. So that's one piece where you don't really want the most attentive audience. But around awareness, people pay attention to brands that they're already aware of, right? And you don't necessarily, the point of advertising is to reach people who aren't aware of your brand. So I think in a lot of ways, you don't necessarily want the most attentive audience. You don't really want the most attentive creative because there's some tension there between how heavily branded creative is and how much attention people pay to it. So I think it's really important to unpack attention from this, like just the duration of attention that's paid to something and understand all those nuances.
And it sounds like there are a lot of nuances. Yan, anything to add on that one?
Sure, I just want to go to the basics a little bit. So all the advanced metrics Mark just mentioned, I think makes a lot of sense. But if you go back to basics, right? Ultimately, marketing is about grab people's attention. Yeah. So you can track outcome, you can track whatever. But if we're running some ads on CTV, nobody in the room, it's just chairs or pets. Clearly, right? You don't need AI, you don't need data science. It's pretty clear nothing's going to happen. So I do believe that attention is the foundation for any successful marketing campaign. And of course, beyond that, we need to optimize for audience. We need to figure out whether it's the right amount of attention for this right amount of for this particular brand. But ultimately, right, for any marketing campaigns, no matter it's B2B or B2C customer, attention is the foundation.
Yeah. Well, actually, on that point, talk to us about what's the state of attention metrics in the B2B marketing industry?
In my opinion, right, no matter you're B2B or B2C, attention is going to be very, very important. But for B2B, we see that they tend to focus on very narrow audience specific for their customer. And those audience tends to be a bit more expensive, right, a bit more premium. So I think it's even extra important for you to make sure you're able to gather the attention because you already spent this big amount of the marketing budget able to get this audience. You want to make sure they actually sit in front of the screen and paying attention to your creative.
A lot of times B2B advertisers have a little bit of a tougher time with outcomes, right? Mm-hmm. They're a little bit more intangible and harder to measure. And so we find that attention metrics are best for advertisers or advertisers who have a hard time connecting exposure to outcome, have a sort of an easier path to adopting attention metrics.
does it work well in B2B with long sales cycles where that exposure to outcome can take a lot of time?
Exactly, yeah.
So Mark, you actually, you shared this previously, that duration of attention is a product of 3 factors: media, creative, audience. Can you expand on that and how they all work together?
Yeah, sure. So we think that, we have this thing called the attention pathway at Adelaide, and that tries to describe the arc of attention over an impression. We think in the beginning of an impression, it's about media creating an opportunity for attention that creative capitalizes on. Now, creative definitely plays a role in the ad being noticed, right? So it's in the beginning of this arc, you have media and creative working together to draw someone in to pay attention to an ad. And then it's really the creative's job to hold that attention and so and sort of build this crescendo of attention, at which point there's a distinctive asset or a branded element that's sort of inserted into the ad and drives that change in thinking or behavior. So I think you want to look at them all together, but you also want to break them apart. And like I said earlier, you don't really want the creative that's going to capture the most attention. That might be puppies or kittens or naked people, and hopefully not in the same ad together. But those things would capture a lot of attention, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily do a lot of work for the brand.
Love to understand, how do you actually prove the value then of attention itself?
Ultimately, we need to drive outcome, and the outcome can be brand lift, can be sign up, can be sales, can be anything, right? But need to be outcome. So both of us, and including other folks on the attention ecosystem, we do a lot of work to really link attention to outcome, and that depends on the brands, depends on the customer segment. The methodology can be different, but attention does drive outcome because, as I said, attention is the foundation for any type of the campaign.
Yeah.
100%. Like all of the clients that we work with, we force them to do an A/B test, look at the correlation between attention and outcomes to prove that attention is a better proxy for outcomes than the metrics that are using today. Because otherwise, attention would be like a vanity metric, and it would be the ultimate vanity metric if it wasn't connected with outcomes.
Exactly. And I think that's part of that discussion of, are we just replacing one vanity metric with the other? But this is, if people are measuring intention, they should connect it to the outcomes, and you'll ensure that as you work with folks that that's what they're doing.
100%.
Awesome. Okay, so how can marketers who aren't using attention metrics in their suite of measurement get started?
So I think the most important thing is to prove connection to outcomes, right? We encourage marketers not to wait for standardization, right? There's so much opportunity now to be had by leaning into the cutting edge of attention metrics, using it for planning, using it for buying, optimization. There's a lot of tools out there in the attention space. And we think it's really important. Get started, prove the connection to outcomes, and then start deploying it where it makes the most sense in your advertising stack.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any recommendations in how others have gotten started more easily?
Yeah, another a risk-free thing brands can do is to take a look at your historical analysis, because initially try to use attention to make optimization, activation can be a bit more challenging because it's a relatively new matrix. But understanding your historical performance, benchmark against your peers, you will learn something, right? After that, you can track your ongoing campaign. Then eventually, you can use attention to run some optimization. I think those are the right steps for brands to kind of get accustomed to attention matrix.
Awesome. So one of the things that we talked about a lot is CTV, and LinkedIn certainly is very excited about our new CTV offering. Would love to get your perspective on what's the difference between a CTV strategy versus a full paid digital strategy?
So we only really focus on big screen, so I'd love to get your thoughts as well.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, CTV compared to other digital media, there's less signal from the traditional measurement point of view. It's difficult to put a JavaScript tag. SDK is not widely adopted, which means there's not much signal. No matter it's viewability, completion rate, that pretty much look the same, which means attention become more important in the context of CTV. It's a great signal to really understand, are you running on some high quality media? So we believe this is super important. And another interesting thing is for CTV, it's a passive media. People can leave the room, right? You can argue on the phone whether people are paying attention or not. At least phone is active and you have some engagement with the audience. But for TV, you can leave the room for 20 minutes. Viewability completion rate can be 100% during that entire 20 minutes, which means unless you really understand attention, there's a huge potential you're wasting your money.
Well, unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time together today. Thank you so much, Mark and Jan.